Analysis Center. Judy, Ohio, North Carolina, why can't we make a projection there?
Well, simply because we do not have enough information to call either state. We are only calling these states exactly at poll closing time, when based purely on the exit polls, those interviews with voters as they leave their polling places. When based purely on that, we feel comfortable that there's a comfortable, wide enough margin that we feel it's safe to make that projection. Otherwise, we are holding off. And at this point, both in Ohio, Wolf, and in North Carolina, which we know is the state that John Edwards has represented in the Senate, neither one of these states do we have enough information. Now, Ohio, both of these candidates have focused on it about as hard as you can. Ohio was in George Bush's pocket 4 years ago. He won it by 4 or 5 percentage points, actually just under 4%. But John Kerry has made a run at it because they've lost over 200,000 jobs in that state. That's what has made Ohio the competitive state that it is. But North Carolina, we're keeping an eye on too.
Judy, those two states that closed at 7 o'clock at the top of the hour, 7 p.m. Eastern, that we have not been able to make a projection on, Virginia and South Carolina. We're beginning to get real numbers, raw numbers in that will help us when combined with the exit poll numbers and the earlier surveys that we've done.
That's right, Wolf, and our team of election analysts and statisticians here at the Election Analysis Center, they're looking constantly not only at the exit poll information that's been coming in throughout the day, but now they are looking at the sample precinct numbers that have been called in and at the raw numbers. And when they feel comfortable that they've got enough information and they are all in agreement on it, then we will make a call. But as of now, we're not there yet on South Carolina. We're not there yet on Virginia, and as you just said, we are not there yet on either Ohio or North Carolina, comfortable enough to make any presidential projection. And of course, Ohio, we knew it was going to be that way. These other 3 states, you know, we know those states have been, you know, the polls have been a little closer in those states.
Judy, I mean, this might be a good time to spend a minute or so and tell our viewers some of the lessons that our experts, our statisticians, our pollsters, our analysts learned from 4 years ago that they've incorporated into the new system not only CNN, but all the major news organizations are using to make these projections.
Well, for one thing, Wolf, we have built up from the ground a whole new system, if you will, using the latest computer technology, and we're able to feed in now even more political analysis and information so that when these calls are made, everybody feels more comfortable about them. We all remember that what happened in Florida 4 years ago, among other things, is that, frankly, there were just some mistakes made. Some numbers were called in wrong from various counties around the state. There was an error in projecting how many absentee ballots were still out. And when you put all that together, coupled with an old computer statistical model, if you will, mathematical model, it was a recipe for a problem, and everything seemed to come together the wrong way. This time, everybody is trying to do everything we can here at CNN to make sure that doesn't happen again, and that means layers of information, double checking with a lot of smart people who've been doing this for years and years and years.
Judy, you'll remember back in 2000, one of the big milestones on the way to that disaster was a computer took thousands of votes away from Al Gore up in Volusia County in Florida. I'm told that our system and the other network system have a built-in red flag, so that if that kind of number shows up again, you're going to have more bells and whistles than we do here in Times Square on New Year's Eve.
Exactly right. And don't ask me, Jeff, to explain how the computer works, the inside of it, but the fact is that these newer, we all know that computers get better and better every few months practically. We now have a computer system that is able to factor in history in a particular county, right down to the smallest geographic political area that you possibly can get, and the computer is constantly comparing the new information that's coming in with how that county voted in the past or that precinct. So this is constantly going on, and all of this is informing our decision making here at CNN and the Election Analysis Center.
Judy, I want to point out to our viewers, if they see that that man behind your left. That's Tom Hannon, our political director, who's in charge
Take a good
of all
look.
of
There
this.
he is.
He's working feverishly now,
He is.
getting information. We don't want to bother him. He's shaking his head.
No,
He's
they're
getting
busy.
information together with our other team, making sure that all the information we have is precise. Jeff, right now, by our count, by our projections, George W. Bush has 39 electoral votes, and John Kerry has 3 electoral votes. Some people will be saying, you know what, that looks like George W. Bush is really doing well.
Well, it's not exactly like a sports event where, you know, the runs come randomly. These are all Bush states. There are no surprises that we've seen so far. When the New England states come in and the Middle Atlantic states come in, it may look like John Kerry has a big lead. Everybody knows there are 6 to 10 states that are going to decide this election, and we have no idea when we'll be able to tell the viewers what's going to happen.
And as we take a look at the popular votes, these are raw numbers that are coming in right now. Bush at 58% with nearly 1 million votes. Kerry at 42% with 662,000 votes. And that will be changing. Nader already has more than 6,000 votes in the raw numbers that are coming in. We shouldn't read much into that either.
No, we learned 4 years ago, I think a lot of people were surprised, you can get more votes than the other guy and lose because of our system. One of the numbers I think all of us are going to be looking at the end of the night, there were about 105 million votes last time, 100 to 105 million. People are expecting as much as 120 million votes. And that's going to tell us whether there was a surge in turnout and whether that surge helped one side or another.
Let's walk over to Larry and Carlos and bring them into this discussion as well. Larry, you're watching all these numbers go by.
I have a few questions. West Virginia was late night 4 years ago. That was touch and go. Surprised that it went so quickly to Bush tonight.
That's one of those states where a heavily rural population has been trending Republican for years. It's one of the biggest problems the Democrats have in Ohio, in rural Pennsylvania, in Michigan, Wisconsin, is that rural and small-town Americans, mostly on values, have just been moving away from the Democrats. That and a lot of coal miners who don't like the Democrats' environmental policy.
And Wolf, do you think Senator Kennedy was maybe overly optimistic?
Well, you know, he's obviously feeling very, very upbeat right now based on anecdotal information and earlier information that he was getting. It's certainly possible that John Kerry will win. It's certainly possible that he won't.
But he was acting like it's a done deal.
One of the things, and it didn't surprise me, and I'll let Carlos weigh in on this as well, because both of these sides learned a lesson from 4 years ago. They want to exude victory. In case there is a problem, they don't want to look like they were spoilers. They want to look like it's theirs, and they're on top.
Very much so. And what's interesting are the hundreds, literally, of what they call satellite interviews on television, on radio, the thousands, millions, if you will, of phone calls and door knocking that's still happening today as we speak, particularly in some of those western states. So no one's giving up at this point. The vice president just 24 hours ago or so was in Hawaii. So there's a lot of effort being made in the western half of the country where lots of states are still open. I wanted to say one thing about Ohio. One of the big stories of this election is that in Ohio and in Pennsylvania, 2 of the big 3 states this time, no Ralph Nader on the ballot. Could be a big deal. We won't know till it's all said and done. But remember, Ralph Nader scored about 2.5 percentage points in Ohio last time. Didn't do poorly in Pennsylvania either. Could make a difference.
He is on the ballot, though, in Florida.
He is on the ballot in Florida one more time.
And Democrats will never forget what happened 4 years ago.
You know what is on the ballot in Ohio and Michigan? Gay marriage. And one of the reasons why the Republicans think they have a shot there is that they believe that's the kind of issue that mobilizes their social conservative base. Whether that's true or not, only time will tell.
By the way, do you think Pat Buchanan will get any write-in votes in Palm Beach? He's not on the ballot. He was 4 years ago.
If there's a butterfly ballot and some hanging chads, perhaps there will be some people who will make that mistake.
And I know you guys deal with computers, but how could Nader have no percent?
Or not quite 1% yet.
Yeah, right.
Maybe not enough to justify 1%.
That's right. In order to get up to 1%, he has to have a specific number, and it's just shy.
We don't do fractions.
not yet. At least. You know, another one of the really interesting storylines when we talk about Nader and we talk about Florida and Ohio and some of these other places are the very different strategies the two sides took to getting out the vote. Republicans, leaning on some success in 2002 in some Senate races, decided to get very centrally organized. So coming out of the Republican National Committee and the Bush campaign, they organized things down to the precinct, had volunteers, had paid staff members. Democrats on the other side, though, decided to partner, not officially because it's not legal, but effectively had help both from unions and from these independent political groups called 527s. If Democrats ultimately succeed, that may become the new model. model on both sides. If conversely Republicans succeed, this will be a transformational change in that Republicans who normally haven't been good on get out the vote efforts will have succeeded not just in Senate races but in presidential races as well.
Let's take a quick look ahead, and Larry, I want you to take a look ahead. It's the top of the hour. What in the top of the hour is only less than 20 minutes or so from now. There are going to be a lot of states closing, including Florida, Pennsylvania, states that potentially could play a decisive role. New Hampshire, one of those battleground states as well.
I have a feeling, just a gut feeling, that we're not going to predict Florida and Pennsylvania at the top of the hour.
Well, what makes you think that?
I don't know.
16 states will be closing at the top of the hour.
You remember we talked earlier about one of the turning points might have been money, that the Republicans thought they were going to be able to face a bankrupt Democratic Party. You realize in Ohio, if you add up Kerry's spending, the Democrat spending, and the so-called 527s, these independent groups, they outspent on advertising the Republicans by a factor of almost 2 to 1. I think if Kerry winds up carrying Ohio and carrying some of these battleground states, this is going to be as significant a factor.
How much did George Soros spend?
I believe he spent more than $10 million out of his own.
North of 20.
Really?
The most recent things we have are 23, 24
George
million.
Soros, the billionaire who's been passionate about his opposition to George W. Bush.
You know what's interesting about the numbers that Jeff mentioned is that if you talk to Democrats 4 years ago, they say one of the reasons they believe they lost Florida was that they ran out of money. And they were outspent by some $700,000, almost $1 million in the last week alone. You look at the 11 most contested states, Democrats and the Democratic National Committee have outspent Republicans in 10 of the 11. Big deal in the final week.
Money talks in these kinds of races, huh?
Oh, I thought you were going to finish that sentence another way. This is the number that is going to jump out at everybody. And the 527s, these independent groups, that loophole in the McCain-Feingold finance law turned out to be literally a $100 million or more loophole. And the Democrats filled it, so far, it looks like, better than the Republicans.
Although one thing that the Republicans did very well is you'll see that they coordinated with the Republican National Committee by putting a key phrase in their ads that allowed them to spend money. I'm sure Chairman Gillespie will talk about that a little bit later.
I think we want to talk to them right now. In fact, let's walk up there. The chairman of both parties, Ed Gillespie, the Republican Party, Terry McAuliffe of the Democratic Party. Ed Gillespie, how are you feeling right now?
I feel great. I am very excited about it. I'm looking at the numbers coming in from the field, and the fact is we have busted through our targets for key precincts that we know are strongly supportive of the president. In Florida, absentee ballots, they process in Florida by registration. It's a party registration state. We're running 2 to 1 ahead, probably a margin of between 150 to 200,000 votes for us in the absentee ballots. They've yet to be counted, but when you look at the partisan breakdown, it looks very, very good for us, and our ground game is better than we had even hoped for, so feeling very good, Wolf.
How are you feeling, Terry McAuliffe?
Wolf, I've never felt better. You can feel the excitement. I'm in Boston today. The millions of people, I said on the morning show today on CNN that we'd have 120 million people vote. I think that's what we're going to have. But, we had 1 million volunteers on the street today. I announced that the DNC today raised over $350 million in federal money. We had 80 million in 2000. Extraordinary. We were able to do everything that we needed to do with a great nominee in John Kerry. Everything's happening. People, record numbers. I just talked to Stephanie Tubbs Jones, the congresswoman from Cleveland. She said there are lines for hours still out in Cleveland, people waiting to go vote. It's exciting. It's great for America. It's great for democracy.
Ed, it's Larry King. You both can't be right, so let's try it this way. What, Ed, concerns you tonight? What are you worried about?
Larry, I feel good about the fact that West Virginia has already been called as one of the states that the Democrats targeted early to try to take back from the president when we surprised them in 2000. We were both on the ground strong there for 2004. You're
not worried about anything?
I'm not worried about anything right now. I'm waiting. I'm sanguine. I'm waiting for the votes to be counted and feeling good that we have executed against a very well done plan. The president ran a fantastic campaign, and I have faith in the American people. And I know that from what I'm seeing in terms of the where our precinct goals were and what I'm seeing coming in from the field, that we have met and exceeded our goals in our battleground states.
Terry, do you have any worries?
Yeah, the only worry I have right now, Larry, is to make sure that we keep these polls open. As I say, I just talked to the folks in Cleveland. They have people waiting still hours in line. The polls are supposed to close in about 20 minutes. Let's make sure that everybody gets in. If you're in line, let's go in and vote. There are so many people who have come out. And as you know, these record amounts of people are not coming out to support an incumbent president. They're coming out because they want a fresh start for this country. And we need to make sure that all these people who are out there in the pouring rain out in Ohio and other places stay in line, call your friends, tell them to stay in line. Get out there and vote. It's exciting what's going on. A fresh start for America starts tonight.
Ed, did the huge turnout